For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike DiCandido. I am the co-founder and board chair of Common Bonds. By April Adams, who is our president and co-founder as well, and we're really happy um, that you're joining us for this event today. And we're very pleased to have a very special guest who's very familiar to the Common Bonds community. So before I introduce Tama, just a couple of housekeeping rules for these calls. One is feel free to keep your video on, but if you need to turn your video off, please do so, especially if you're going to multitask. We understand that. And it's no problem. Please have your audio off as well. Um, with Google Meets, you'll see on the bottom right-hand side of the page a little box with 3 lines. That's the chat feature. The chat feature is what we use for questions. So if you have a question either during or after Tama's done, I just put in questions. So hopefully if you pulled it up, you can see it. And as we're going along, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll queue up Tama with the question, flow of the conversation, or wait till the end and have Tama answer the questions then. So without further ado, I want to welcome Tama Spoerri, who is our speaker tonight to talk about salary negotiations and ways to help you in your professional lives, position yourself for career advancement opportunities. Tama is a Philadelphia native, born and raised in Philly. Went to Syracuse University and graduated from there. She's got 30 years of HR experience. With a number of different organizations, Bergdorf Goodman, Shop and Stop, Fleet Bank, where Tama and I met. We won't say, Tama, how long ago that was, because it was a long time ago. And Tama's been with Bowdoin since 2002 as their VP of Human Resources. I'm going to do a little bit of plug for Bowdoin here for you Bowdoin folks who are on. Bowdoin might not be a common name of a school that folks know outside of the Northeast, but Bowdoin is one of the top universities in the country. Recently ranked number 6 for National Liberal Arts Schools by U.S. News and World Report. Nietzsche ranked at number 2 as the best liberal arts school in the country. And overall rankings for colleges, all colleges and universities, Bowdoin is ranked 36th in the country. So it is a very high academic and wonderful school located up in Brunswick, Maine, which is a wonderful community as well. One other thing we like to do when we announce our guests is talk about their community involvement. And Tama, as well as all of our speakers, are always actively involved in the community. Tama has served on the board of the Cancer Community Center, a position she took to honor the memory of her dad, who she lost to cancer in 1995. Tama has also served on the Fidelity Investments Tax-Exempt Market Advisory Board. Her passion is helping students, and she often volunteers at Bowdoin for the Career Exploration and Development Office to present practical career-related seminars, such as this one. So we asked Tama to take that experience that she does for the students and apply it to our Common Bonds community. And to us, the most important volunteer job that Tama does is she serves on our Common Bonds board, and we're blessed to have her. So without further ado, Tama, I'll hand it over to you and have you get started. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight. I am delighted to actually be able to share this with folks, and I will definitely share my contact information because I'm going to point to my friend Nate over there. I am happy to be a coach, an advisor, or otherwise help you through any kind of salary negotiation or otherwise. I believe strongly in kind of paying it forward, but it's also, part of something that I do that I'm happy to share those, skills with you all. So, as Mike said, I've shared this actual information with our CXD, our career exploration, for the last few years. I love having the opportunity to work with students. I've helped many of them negotiate their first job offers. And negotiating a first job offer versus negotiating a second job offer versus negotiating a promotion, or even just having an opportunity to negotiate to say, hey, I'd like to be able to look at my salary and how to do that in a way that I think is productive and a way in which I think allows you to do it in a professional manner is really important. So I'm happy to provide that coach. But tonight I'm going to kind of walk you through some different tools, tricks, ideas, things that I think about as the head of HR. This is something we do on the other side all the time with candidates. And so many different industries that HR versus a hiring manager, there's lots of ways this can be done. So this isn't the one size fits all, but I'm going to kind of give you some tips and tricks and a smaller raise than somebody who's negotiated something higher. So it's really important, and if you think about it, if you think about the fact that women don't negotiate, well, that's part of the reason why women only earn 81 to 84% of what a man earns, and women of color only earn 75% for the same position and the same hours. So depending upon where you live, there's some actual good news. There's some legislation. There's some states that are doing some things. And now in 21 states, an employer can no longer ask you about your salary history. So that they're not looking at what you're currently earning. They're really looking at what the job should pay for anybody who applies for that job and is qualified. And there's a lot of actual regional work that's also being done to have these local and statewide bans on asking about salary information. As a result of more positions being posted with wage information, so salaries often, for lots of competitive reasons, employers do not like to post jobs with their salary information. They like a lot of flexibility. But because of now this not ability to ask, or to see somebody's salary history, they're being more proactive in putting wage information right in a posting or in a new job. Interestingly enough, after this ban went in place where we couldn't ask salary information, African American women saw a salary increase of 14% and African American men saw an increase of 16%. So it's making a difference. However, that being said, the one other thing I just learned in a survey yesterday, or a webinar I was attending yesterday, is that right now 55% of employees who are actively employed are actively looking for jobs. Okay. Wow. So if you're actively looking for a job and you don't work at Bowdoin, how is it that you know that you're getting a fair offer? How is it that you know that this is a good offer? And I think the first part of understanding if this is a good offer, regardless of whether it's a salary promotion for a job you currently have, or whether in essence you're negotiating this for a new company. You've gone out, you've gotten yourself a job offer. How do you know that it's competitive, and how do you know what it is that you can negotiate? So part of knowing and part of being able to do that is really to dissect the offer, because depending upon the industry and the type of job, there are many parts to a job offer. And it's not just salary necessarily. It's salary, it's benefits, it's additional parts of compensation like bonuses, stock options, relocation, paid time off, educational benefits like tuition reimbursement or student loan repayment programs. And so you kind of need to know when they make you a job offer, we all focus initially on, okay, what's the salary? But I would caution you to say, okay, what's the salary and what are the other parts of the offer that make up what the total compensation is? Because sometimes that can be equally as important as salary, like things like tuition reimbursement or a student loan repayment plan. Is the job hybrid? Is it remote? Is it in person? Do I have to commute? So there's a lot of aspects to this. And the very first thing that we need to do is we need to do our homework. And the first part of the salary is absolutely it's pay. What is the base pay that they're offering you? And how do you know that it is competitive? And it's going to vary depending upon if you're working for a small nonprofit, your salary is not going to be the same thing as if you got a job offer to go work for JP Morgan in investment banking. I mean, if you're a marketing person and you're going to work for Google versus a small nonprofit, your salaries are going to be totally different. So you got to understand what is the market for the position that you're being offered, what kind of industry, and where, and what, what's the norm in that arena, and also what city. If you're in San Francisco, hopefully the salary offer is going to be a whole lot higher than if you're in, Bangor, Maine, versus if you're in Philly. So you got to understand kind of all of those pieces. So first thing you need to do is you got to do your homework. And a lot of times we get asked the question is, well, where do you find pay information, and where do you find pay information that is credible? So first off, one is, did they post the position with a salary range? Because then that gives you the, a really clear picture of, kind of where they pictured you in that salary range. Sometimes they'll post it with a very wide one, and sometimes they'll post it with a very narrow salary range. But if they don't do that, and you're not lucky enough to have that, there are lots and lots of websites. Well.
So we do have her on the radar. We just don't have an appointment yet for her, just so you know.
All right, can you put your phone on mute?
I'm sorry. It's like, who's talking to me? I'm like, okay. Anyway, so if they don't know, there's lots of things out there. There's, glassdoor.com. You can go out to salary.com. You can, lots of stuff on Google can give you a lot of information. I would say that if you're a college student, you can definitely go to your career exploration, your career planning department, and you can ask them, what's the norm in this industry? What's out there? But there is a lot of information that you can find on the web. Now, the challenge with that is you have to take a look at it and take it with a grain of salt, because often when they report that information, they may not be totally taking into consideration years of experience, or the fact that somebody with maybe a master's degree can negotiate more than somebody who has just a bachelor's degree. And some of that data that's out there on Glassdoor and salary.com gets a little mushy. But at least it's a starting point. So you have that in mind, and you've done your research so that they're prepared, and they make you the offer. Well, hopefully when they make you the offer, they're going to tell you, like, okay, your starting pay is X. And we have this incredible benefits package that includes, retirement plan, and it includes medical and dental, and it includes all these things. But you have to really be careful, because, and one thing I would say is, if there's one thing you walk away, is never accept the job at that moment when they offer you the job. Never accept it on the spot. Even if they try to pressure you to do that, I think that's really, one, I don't like that. It's not really professional. But two, you got to take a moment to digest all of the different pieces and really understand what's important to you. So you need to, let's break it down a little bit and think about those other, what I call the hidden costs and impacts to salary that people don't consider. So things like medical benefits. Medical benefits are really important. And if you're over 26 and you can no longer be on your parents' plan, the cost of a medical plan can be expensive, even as an individual. It could be upwards of almost $100 a month for a Cadillac plan, and they may offer other high deductible plans. So you need to know kind of, what does that benefit framework look like, and how much is it going to cost you? Because there are some plans. Okay, so Bowdoin, we have a wildly generous benefits package. Our plan is, we have 3 plans. We have 2 high deductibles, and we have a now open access plan. What does that mean? How am I going to spend my money if I get sick? So thinking of those kinds of things are really important to understand, what is their benefit plan, if they even offer one. What about retirement plans? There's all different kinds of retirement plans. Small companies might not even have them. Some of them have small profit sharing plans. Some of them have nothing. Some of them, like Bowdoin, has a ridiculously generous retirement plan. And so taking a look at that, even as a young person, is really important, because if they offer a retirement plan and they say, we'll match up to 3%, as much as you possibly can, you should try to contribute up to 3% because that 3% is free money to you that the company is going to put into that retirement account. Understand what vesting means of that retirement account. Sometimes you get that 3%, but you have to stay for 2 years to be vested, or you have to stay for 1 year to be vested. But again, that money is really important because of laws of compounding. So retirement plans are important to understand, how they play into your total compensation. The other thing to think about is what I like to call like the other pieces of compensation: bonus plans, stock option plans. They can be very different for very different large organizations. When I was in banking, stock options and bonuses, you had to be at a certain level, you had to be rated a certain performance, but they over time, if you're certainly higher in the organization, those kinds of things make a huge difference in your financial well-being in the long term. So understanding how that impacts the salary offer is really also important. So you now have this offer, you have all these benefits, and where do you even begin? If it's a small nonprofit and you really value the fact that you want to be able to have flexibility in your schedule because you want to take some graduate courses and you want to continue your education, they may be able to negotiate with you, maybe not much in the salary, but you might be able to negotiate either some time off to go to school on Thursday afternoons. You need to leave at 3 o'clock, and they're like, great, that's terrific, we can accommodate that. It could be that in the small nonprofit, in addition to being able to negotiate maybe some additional time off, or maybe you get to negotiate the fact that you could work from home. Again, they may be willing to negotiate on things because their salaries can't necessarily be quite as high. And I'm not talking nonprofit in the higher ed space. I'm talking small, local nonprofit. Like I sat on the board of the Cancer Community Center. So we were able to negotiate those kinds of things. If you work for a really large company, things like the retirement plan, the medical benefits, and in some cases time off, are not able to really be negotiated because they're really plans or either governed by ERISA because they have pre-tax deductions or whatever else. So sometimes those benefits aren't able to be negotiated. Sometimes time off might be if it's for something that you need to do in a short period of time. So if you're working they've offered you a job, they want you to start, in the next few weeks, but you have a family wedding 4 months from now, and you're going to be in that wedding and you need the time off, you should negotiate that up front. Listen, I have a family wedding, I need to be off these days. Is that something that I can either take off paid and take some of my vacation time, or if I don't have vacation time, can I, go into arrears in vacation time, or negotiate it right up front, see what they say, but you want to put that on the table. You don't want to wait until you get in and whatever, and the next thing you know, they're like, oh, well, that's a blackout period for vacation time, or you're going to be unpaid for that. So companies have all sorts of different policies around those type of things. It's best to put it on the table right up front. Again, depending on the size or the nature of the company, you might be able to negotiate a sign-on bonus. So if you're, in Brunswick, Maine, and you get a job in Boston or Philadelphia, and it might be that you could negotiate a relocation. Even if it's a small amount, I need to get myself from here to there. Could you help me relocate? Or is there a possibility of a sign-on bonus? Or transition award? Just so you know, companies and recruiters and HR people call these things lots of different stuff. Basically, it is cash in the door in a separate one-time bucket that you may be able to be paid to help you as you're transitioning into this new role. So let's just say you're offered a new position or you're offered a promotion, and you want to start off your negotiation with the person, if you can, who can make the decision, if possible. So is that the hiring manager, or is it the HR person who made the offer to you? It may depend, again, on the company, the size of the company. And here's my little secret. Many times, the company will not put the best offer on the table because they will anticipate that you will negotiate. So they don't want to put the full amount on the table because they don't want to be able to say no. So that is my trick to say to you guys. You definitely need to negotiate. Unless they come out and tell you right off the bat, this is the very best I can do. There is absolutely no room for negotiation, which it's not often that happens. Basically, they're waiting for you to negotiate. Now, they may say, listen, I can't move on salary, but here I'm going to give you a sign-on bonus of X amount. But again, many times, many times, company will not put the best offer on the table because they anticipate that people are going to want to negotiate. So negotiate. So again, do your homework, know what is the appropriate salary. So say you get a position, they offer you a position, and you know that you did your research, and you know that the range should be somewhere between, I'm going to pick a wild amount, between $60,000 and $70,000. And they offer you a position at $58,000. And you're like, okay. Or they offer you just the 60, and you're like, maybe I think I should, have a little bit more to bring to the table. Again, one thing I always say is never accept the job right at that spot. Secondly, always be appreciative. Thank you so much for the offer. Is there any additional information? I'd love to be able to think about it, and can I get back to you tomorrow? Or can I get back to you if it's Friday on Monday? There are very few times ever that I've ever come across where someone has not said, that's fine, no problem. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call us. Often the trick is they're going to say, go check out our benefits on the webpage. Okay, I know, I can only know Bowdoin's webpage when we have a lot of stuff about HR and our benefits all on our webpage. However, I'm an HR person, and sometimes I'm overwhelmed by that. So take the time to review it and understand all the different pieces, because again, if you sign up for health insurance, you're going to have that deducted from your check. If you sign up for dental insurance, it's going to come from your check. If you decide that you want to contribute to the retirement contributions, it's going to come out of your check. So, and by the way, you're going to also pay taxes. And if you live in a city like New York City, you're not only going to pay state taxes, and you may pay city taxes. I don't know if they do that in Philadelphia. I definitely know they do it in New York. So you want to make sure that the dollar amount that you think you're going to be getting, and you start taking all these deductions, that you're going to still be in a position to say, yep, this is the right job at the right pay. So you now say, okay, I have my data. I've called Tama because she's helped me negotiate this, which I will help you do. And you want to go back to the person and negotiate. Okay, here's the thing. This may be the old-fashioned me. However, this stuff is really important. And my preference is never to negotiate over email, ever. It loses tone. It loses context. It's not as easy to have a dialogue. My recommendation is, as much as you possibly can, is that if you're going to negotiate, you do it by actually picking up the phone and calling the person and being able to say, I'm really grateful for this. This is a really generous offer. I do have a few questions. I was really hoping that the salary would be X, Y, or Z because I am currently making this and I'm bringing this additional experience, and I would really like 65,000. I believe it's really fair. Put a number on the table. If they've offered you 60 and you put a number on the table. Now, if you expected 80 and they offer you 60, that's something that you should never probably have gotten that far in the interview process without having some realization of the fact that you were $20,000 off, not $5,000 off. Mike, is that you have your hand up, or Helen DiCandido has her hand up?
That's Helen, but I think you can ignore that.
Okay, fine. I just wasn't sure if I was missing you telling me I had a question.
Although there is a question that came up that I'll tell you now, because I think it's appropriate. We have Erica actually had a question. As you're talking about salary negotiation, can you talk a little bit about the rules around employers asking you what your current salary is, as well as what your ideal salary? Because I know those rules have changed of what they can currently ask you.
Right.
Can you go through that a little bit as well?
Yep. So that's perfect, because this goes right into this conversation of really knowing a little bit more about what you should anticipate. You should kind of know where the offer should be. Again, there are 21 states right now that have a band that say that an employer cannot ask you your current salary history. Now, I can only tell you that I'm sure that they do anyway, because they're not ever expecting that someone's going to go file some complaint with the Department of Labor that they ask you your salary. My recommendation is that if they ask you, so can you tell me what you're currently earning? I would say, well, I'd be interested in understanding what is the salary range for this position, because I'm bringing 5 years of experience. And I just want to make sure that in essence, before I were to offer up a number, that in essence, what is the range for this current position? Throw it back to them. And people do that to us all the time. And I will tell you that again, I've now worked at a few companies, but I remember back in the day, because I was coming out of a for-profit fleet bank, where I had options and a bonus and whatever, and I'm coming to a small liberal arts college, and I was in Maine, but I was coming to Bowdoin, and I'm talking to Barry, for those of you who are from Bowdoin. And I straight up asked him the question, this is what I'm currently making, and I'm hoping to make X. And I have no problem with that. Actually, I'm very much a proponent or an advocate for having a conversation around salary before you get to that job offer with the current company that you're, interviewing with. I think it's good practice on the employer side for us to give salary ranges. I also think I think it's totally fine to ask the salary range when you're interviewing for a job. I don't know if there's any other HR people out there that would disagree with me, but I totally appreciate it, and I'm totally happy to have that conversation. I don't want surprises. I don't want to be at the end of my interviews, have the greatest candidate ever, and have them turn it down because we were $20,000 apart. I want to make sure that we're in the same ballpark. So I appreciate having that conversation. And again, I think it's fine if they start to ask you what's your salary expectation. Well, my salary expectation is negotiable. I'm really interested more in the position. Can you tell me what the range is for the position, that you have posted, or that, that we're talking about today? Totally fine. Way to do it. Nice, professional. I don't have any concerns about doing that. Kind of going back. So, that's the perfect way to negotiate. So now I'm going back to my, if they've offered you 60 and you want to go back to 65, again, I absolutely say, pick up the phone, call the person. I think this is a really generous offer. I have some questions about not only the salary, but some of the benefits. Could you explain to me? Pick a couple benefits, pick when tuition reimbursement, when does it kick in? Is there any opportunity to waive that because I'm starting in October and I'd like to take some classes in January? Would I be eligible to do that? Like, definitely ask your questions, and ask them up front. Is there when is my first formal performance evaluation? At that time, am I eligible for compensation? At companies like Bowdoin or colleges like Bowdoin, we do all salary increases on July 1st. And so, if somebody is starting and it's now the end of April, I want to make sure it's clear to them that they're actually not eligible until July a year from now. So you want to make sure that that is something that you understand. When is my first review? How is then annual compensation reviewed? I'll be perfectly honest with you. This last 2 years of COVID, there are other questions I would want to ask after they make me an offer, which is things like, can you tell me that through the pandemic, were employees laid off or furloughed? Would this position have been one of those that was furloughed? You want to know kind of what is the financial stability of the company, or the whoever you're going to. Now, if you're Google, or if you're going to Microsoft, or you're going to JP Morgan, or one of the big companies, you might not need to ask that. But there's a lot of smaller companies that struggled through some of the pandemic, and so you want to make sure that the company, the company or the nonprofit or whatever, you're not going to be in a situation where all of a sudden you're out of a job because of some economic downturn or COVID or whatever else. So those are some good questions to think about too. Is tell me a little bit about how you handled COVID in the offices and with your employees. Is not a bad question. When is my first performance evaluation? When can I expect a compensation review? Again, anything about time off, ask about medical benefits. Most medical benefits start within 30 days, but there are some that might start later than that. So you want to just make sure you have all of your questions answered. And again, one of the questions might be is, I was really, the salary that I was anticipating is $65,000. I feel that's competitive based on the information that I know, I've researched. Is there any negotiation? Is there any opportunity to negotiate the base salary? There you go. What's the worst that can happen? They can say no. Not the end of the universe. You've done it in a professional way. You've said, that you have done your research and that this is a competitive salary. It's what your expectations might be. And it's totally fine. They're not going to withdraw an offer by the fact that you've asked for $5,000 or you've asked for whatever, tuition reimbursement early or anything along those lines. And again, many companies go in with an offer anticipating that you're going to negotiate. So again, 5,000, 8,000. Again, if you want to negotiate 20,000, that's where you might be on a different page than what the position is if they're that far apart. Then I would say definitely call me, because there might be some definite differences in what they're expecting of the job, and the candidates that they were looking at to fulfill what they were looking for in the job might not be in the same plane. The other thing I would say is, whenever you negotiate, if in fact they say, yep, you know what, we can't go all the way to 65 due to internal equity, et cetera, but we're willing to take the salary to 62.5. And you could say, is there any chance you might be able to do a sign-on bonus for the other $2,500? Totally fine. Again, what's the worst they can do? Say no. Whatever, I think as long as it's done and it's done professionally and you're grateful, I think that in essence, you're in a good place. But then anything you negotiate, ask for in writing. Get it in writing. You've negotiated an extra week off. You've negotiated the fact that they're going to allow you to have the tuition reimbursement benefit early. You've negotiated the new salary. You want a new salary. You want a new offer letter. Not that it happens often, but anything you negotiate, get it in writing. Even if you're currently employed and a manager says to you, you're going to have your salary is going to be reviewed in April. I don't know, pick a time frame. Your salary is going to be reviewed in May. We do our salary reviews in April, just so you know. But that's why I keep going to that date in my head. And so, but anything, even if you're currently working and you go into your boss and you want a promotion and whatever else along those lines, if they say, I'm definitely going to look at it. And I will have we'll look at it in April, and write an email back to your boss and say, thank you so much. I look forward to us, looking at my salary in April. Let me know if there's any information that I can help provide, or et cetera. I look forward to that review. So just confirm it in an email if you're negotiating. And April, you just asked me a question, but it just went zoop off the screen.
Well, I can read it. I can read it, April, if you want. So the question was around, do you have statistics around any disparity around race? I don't have the number, but African Americans routinely get paid less than their white counterparts. How can African Americans ensure that we are in the range as our white counterparts? And I think, just to add to that, how do you, if you're aware of that, so if you're made aware of that with your employer, how do you, so to answer April's question, how do African Americans ensure that we are in the range as our white counterparts? And secondly, how do you approach your employer if you're aware of those disparities?
So first of all, if you don't want to, again, I'm speaking from my perspective, is if you don't want to talk to your direct boss about it, sit down and talk to somebody in HR. We are not evil catbird. I'm happy to, and have done numerous times, salary reviews. I will go out and look at salary survey data. I will pull it all together, and I'm happy to share it with the employee as well as the manager. So I'm happy to do that, and my team is happy to do that. Now, I'm not sure that every HR department is, but make friends. Go talk to somebody in the HR department where you are, and or call me, because I'm happy to tell you what competitive data that I have access to. I'm happy to share. But I would say that in essence, there's couple things I want to say is, now that they have banned it, we know that African American women and men are getting bigger salary increases because of the fact that they've banned now this ask for salary history on initial job applications. So that's one good thing. I think that the other thing is one, I know that there are companies out there that will tell you you cannot talk about your salary or you could be fired. Well, that is illegal, just so you know. The National Labor Relations Board protects the fact that employees have a right to talk about the terms and conditions of their employment. So you have a right to talk to your colleagues and your people who work with you. And I have to tell you that I think at Bowdoin, everybody talks about their salary, so it's not always a secret. But if you find something like that out, that all of a sudden you are making less than a colleague or whatever, you need to go address it. You need to say, I understand this person is making, $8,000 more than me, yet I have this much more experience. And yes, I might have only been at Bowdoin for 2 years and they've been here 3 years, but I think that's a disparity that needs to be looked into. You should definitely ask the question, again, in a polite and a professional manner, but it's okay to ask the question. And if the manager doesn't know, then you need to say to the manager, I'd love you to come to HR with me, because I really need to understand this disparity as to why it is, I'm being paid a competitive rate based on my peers in this role with the same level of experience, the same degree, the same whatever. Generally speaking, they should be in the realm of, maybe a couple $1,000s. If the person started a year before, just purely on salary increases, that might be a little bit, but it shouldn't be huge. It should not be a big disparity. And again, it's okay to ask, to get your ducks in a row, have your homework done. And again, if the answer is no, I think that's where somebody needs to then make a decision to say, they're not valuing me for my contributions. My performance is equal or better than these other individuals, and I shouldn't be paid that much less. And unless they're willing to say, listen, I know, or you know what, thank you for bringing it. Now we looked at it, we're going to address it at the next salary increases that we provide. Okay, that's great. And then the question would be is there any opportunity to have it adjusted off cycle? Some companies do that, some don't. So you can definitely ask those questions. If they're not willing to do anything, well, that's when you, in this market where there's a bazillion jobs open and companies really fighting for talent, you go negotiate yourself a new job at a place where, in essence, you can be recognized and rewarded. So this is where you control your own destiny. And again, an employer can say no. Actually, yep, Mike, the statistic is that women make 81 to 84 cents of what men earn, and women of color make 75 cents for every dollar. And again, so there's lots of room to negotiate. Now, I will tell you that there are some employers, and I know in higher ed across some of my peers, and I know we do it, I do an annual report to the audit committee where I actually do a presentation on gender pay equity and diverse, all kinds of diversity. So we look at it and make sure that that doesn't exist here at Bowdoin. And I'm actually really pleased to say that in some cases, our women make more than our men. You don't want to know that, Claw? No, I'm only kidding. I know there are more efforts around audit committees and companies looking at gender pay equity and racial equity in compensation across their divisions and their companies. And again, we at Bowdoin take it pretty seriously. I do those reports on a regular basis. I don't usually do them in July after our salary increases. Actually, I usually look at it before our salary increases to make sure that there's nothing I need to adjust before they're all put into place for July 1st. Okay, so I've now talked for almost 45 minutes, and I'm sure there are questions out there, and I'm happy to answer them and go through any kind of questions on benefits. Again, my takeaways are definitely get it in writing, definitely negotiate, because again, what's the worst thing that can happen is that they might say no. But again, I think that there's lots of ways to do it in a very positive way. And again, my preference is to do it as a conversation, a respectful conversation, and not necessarily to use email except as a confirmation afterwards. Happy to take questions, or I think there's a few hands up, Mike.
Yeah, so Tama, a couple of come in. One is, so we talked a lot about kind of new jobs, and we talked a lot about salary comparability, so to speak. How about if you're individually in a position that you're looking to be promoted, and the promotion comes up, and part of that promotion is understanding how you negotiate the salary. And you mentioned earlier in the call the challenge that people have in working at companies longer term is the salary compression that comes with the 3% increase each year. So can you address a little bit for folks who are on the call and maybe looking at career progression and the promotional opportunities, how to approach your manager on that, and then how the salary piece comes into play along with things like the title and those types of things?
Yep, sure, definitely. One is, again, companies handle promotional opportunities in different ways. Some promotional opportunities come because there are companies that are required to post all positions. So you're actually posting, or you're, in essence, applying for that promotion. There are other companies that do promotions that are what I call personal promotions, that in essence are, you've done such a great job and you have been an assistant director for a long time, and now you're going to get a promotion to an associate director. And what should you expect if you move up in a role that's similar, but you have more experience and you need to be considered for the next level. So depending on how you're getting this promotion, if this promotion is coming because you've asked for it, you've posted for it internally with your in your organization, and they come back and they offer you the position, again, you should really do your homework and understand what is the level difference between an assistant director and associate director, or between an accountant 1 versus an accountant 2, or whatever the steps are. You should definitely, again, kind of do your homework, but you should definitely, at the time of the promotion, get a decent raise, because again, it's kind of the next floor for which you're then going to get your next salary increases, 3%, et cetera, on and on. And so don't be afraid to negotiate that. Like, I was hoping that this position, I've been here X number of years, I bring this to the table. Again, they offer you 60 and you say, I really think that for this promotion, in this role with these responsibilities, I think 65 is a fair number. Again, it's kind of doing your homework, but you can totally negotiate with a promotional opportunity. And again, if that promotional opportunity is, let me think about this. So say you are an accountant, and you, instead of being an accountant in the finance office, you're now going to become a finance person embedded in a division. Sometimes there are specialists or something along those lines, and you're bringing your finance skills over into that role. I mean, you should definitely negotiate. This is a new role. I bring all of this experience. I understand the company. And again, I'm committed to this. This is my career trajectory. This is what I want to do. And so as you're going for a promotion, you should definitely have the same kinds of conversations around being promoted. It is also perfectly fine, as you are talking to your boss, if it's a internal promotion in your area, is to and the position's been posted, is to ask the question, what kind of promotional increase might I be expecting to take on this additional responsibility and to move into this role of greater responsibility, and I've had the experience, etc. So it's kind of just knowing what you're again, asking the question politely, whatever, but it's fine to ask. And I always get worried when people, I try to keep salaries confidential so that we're not, in essence, talking about people's, but I'm happy to share ranges, or, what we have anticipated, or, it should be in this. So as a manager, I'm happy to share information, or should be happy to share information around, there's if you move into this promotional opportunity and you're selected for this, you can expect a 10% or something along those lines. Now, there's lots of stuff out there on Google that says if you get promoted, you should definitely get a 10% salary increase. You know what? There's an exception for every rule. So it's not just a hard and fast. It might be that you need a 15% increase or a 20% increase, depending on what the promotion is and what the qualifications are and what you're going to be doing. Other questions, Mike?
I have another one, and actually this one's from me. I put it in the chat to give Nate a little heads up on this, but I know you've spoken very highly about Nate and his time at Bowdoin and his time after Bowdoin. And Nate, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you use the advice, how you've been able to use the advice from Tama, both at your time at Bowdoin, where you were coming out of school and looking for your first opportunity, as well as in your current opportunity to help grow your career. And I think the mentoring piece as well would be something that would be nice for people to hear. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am going to put you on the spot.
He's good.
That's totally cool.
Yeah.
So I graduated from Bowdoin in 2020, which was kind of a crazy time, but I knew Tama through a couple committees I worked on, and we kept in touch after I graduated. And I think, so like, I come from like a working class family, so going to college was kind of new to me, and then having like jobs was also kind of new to me. And at my school that I'd worked at throughout college and school I'd gone to, actually, they had a job posting, and I applied, and now I work at a middle school in Rhode Island. And I think taking that first job was helpful to talk to Tama about what to expect. The salary was kind of low, but the benefits were really strong. So being a young person, my school, they give me, I don't take their medical benefits, but they give me half of what they would spend on it, which is a plus. And more recently, um, I got a promotion, which was pretty cool. And I had to negotiate my salary for that. Because also in talking to everyone at my job, I realized I was like super underpaid. um, like I was like probably the lowest paid person at my job, but I was like middle of the organizational structure. So my job also takes advantage of my young age, and they want me to do more work. And realizing that, I went to my boss during my performance review, and I had outlined everything in my job description I was doing pretty well, and then everything I was doing outside of my job description I was also doing pretty well. So he didn't really have much of a response when I asked for more money. And when we started talking about numbers, and I talked to Tam about it beforehand, I suggested one thing, and he suggested another, which was like much, much lower. And he was like really surprised when I suggested something higher, and he got kind of mad and like flustered. And I said like, well, if you need time to think about it, that's okay, but this is what I want. And it was funny because he was like, no, I can't do that. But then the next day he was like, actually, I can do that. So it was helpful talking to Tama to like stick to my guns, because I knew what I was worth, and I knew what I could be paid at a different school or at a different organization. So I wasn't really asking for like that much, even though I got a big paid raise because I was underpaid in the first place. Um, and so that was really helpful. And it's helpful to have like, it's helpful to know the numbers and the experience and everything, but it's also just helpful to have like the moral support, because I could call Tama afterwards and be like, oh, this guy, you won't believe him. But then also like everything worked out. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
See, so it does work, you guys. It does. Right? Nate, staying strong, being positive, but being professional, being prepared was really helpful. So again, it is something that's helped Nate and hopefully others. But and again, the person said no and got flustered and whatever, which is a natural response. But don't just stay calm, cool, collected, positive, grateful. Now I can't guarantee they're always going to say yes. But,
yeah. I think the problem I'm having now is that like my boss, he made a comment during that exchange where he was like, if you're about it for the money, you should look at another school. And I'm not about it for the money. I just want to be paid fairly. But I feel like I have a point of tension with him now in asking for more money in the future. Like, I don't want him to think I'm just like here for the money. I'm here because I want to do good work, but I just want to be paid appropriately.
Right.
Tim, another question, and an interesting. We have a number of followers of Common Bonds who are teachers, and they work in education, and they work in union environments, so to speak. So when you talk about the standard 3% increase, et cetera, as part of their contracts, is there any advice that I know you have experience in working in union environments as well, and any advice that you could give them on ways to potentially either maximize their salary or their compensation through other means, or ways that they can position themselves for promotion into other positions, knowing there's a lot of, I use the school districts as an example. There's a lot of other teaching positions that pay at different bands, et cetera. But any advisement you can give to them where their salary is kind of
that becomes incredibly challenging in those kind of environments, because very much a lot of it is all very much governed by the collective bargaining agreement, and it becomes harder to differentiate pay. The only thing that I know in some of the experience I have with it is sometimes the thing that can help is an advanced degree additional certificate, another area of expertise. So you can teach history and math, or you can, because right now I know, and again, in the school districts around, like there is a major shortage of teachers. And so having teachers that say, listen, I'm happy to pick up an extra class, or I'm happy to do advising to this club, or I'm happy to do, sometimes it's those extra things that one can boost their compensation because they're somewhat outside of just the standard union contract. So it does get a little challenging because in many of those contracts, it's like if you have 1 to 3 years experience, you get paid this, and you have this, you get this, and the salary increases are all negotiated by whatever the current collective bargaining agreement is. So it does get a little challenging. I would say that you may have some more bargaining by virtue of the fact that you need to explore what the contracts are at neighboring schools. Because it very likely could be that you might be able to say, well, I can go teach over here, and this is what their contract is. And sometimes there might be some wiggle room to be able to then have them help keep you, which I know many school districts are trying to think of creative ways in which to do retention of the current teachers so that they aren't hopping to different districts that have different pay structures within their bargaining agreements.
Great, thank you. One more question. I'm gonna take kind of two questions that are out there and put them into one. One of them's from April. One of them's from Fennell. So the question is, if in Nate's situation, is it okay to respond that he understands that he's paid the least and I need to be paid fairly? Is that confrontational? So that's the first part of it. And the second part of it is, what if they said no? Kind of, what's the advice you give somebody if in Nate's situation, if they came back and said no, this is what we're paying?
Well, I could probably tell you exactly what I said to Nate is, then you need to go look for some place to work that values your contribution, because I think that he contributes a huge ton for what he gets paid. And so my humble opinion is if the answer is no, then you need to really do some self-reflection to say, okay, do I really need to go look for another job at another place where they can actually value my contributions? So we've had that conversation is, do you need to go look for another job where they really value you? I think going back to April's question about, is it confrontational? I think it's all in the manner and the tone in which it's done. Being respectful to say to your bosses, I know I'm paid the least, and I just need to know that I'm paid fairly, is not necessarily confrontational. It says that I need to know that I'm valued in my workplace. And I'm doing all this, and this. I've taken, and by the way, with all the feedback I've gotten, I believe I'm doing it in a satisfactory or better way. And I need to feel as though I am, being paid somewhat fairly for what I'm really contributing to this work environment. So I don't necessarily think it needs to be confrontational. I think it needs to be respectful, but I think it can be done in a way that just says, I want to know that I'm valued. And I would say to all you bosses that are on the call, you need to make sure your employees feel as though they're valued, and that you thank them on a daily basis, and that you are recognizing them in ways that don't necessarily always need to be financial. That's really important. People need to know they're valued and that they're respected for their work. And that's really important. I think it's really important in a workplace. That's how I like to be treated. And I know that's like, I really make sure that I try to extend that to my employees as well.
Fantastic. Tama, any final thoughts before we hand it over to April for some closing comments?
Nope. If you have, oh, yes, well, here, let me just do this. Everybody have a pen and a piece of paper? This is my cell phone number. It's 207-653-2615. And my email is tspoerri@bowdoin.edu. Hey, if you want to talk through a situation with me, if you want to walk through an offer, or you want to walk through how you want to have a conversation with your boss about a promotion, anything along those lines, I am happy to do it. I'm happy to do it in total confidence. I'm a really strong believer in paying it forward. I love working with folks. And again, I feel like I'm an independent. Well, I don't know about Nate will say this, because I'm like, I really try to be like a neutral third party. And I'm like, but you need to make sure that you feel valued, and you need to feel like, that you're being compensated for your contribution. And again, that compensation maybe goes beyond base salary and benefits and other things that the institution or a company can offer you. But I think it's really, something that, you all can do, but you can always call me, and I'm happy to be that coach. I appreciate everyone jumping in and coming on board tonight and paying attention. And Fennell, it's so funny, but I just have to make a sidebar commercial announcement. Fennell, I've talked to Nate about you and your run for the District 100. And he was talking to his students about politics, and I was like, I need to connect you. Anyway, but that's on a different side. Figured I'd connect you tonight because you're both on the same call. Anyway, that's how that all works. Anyway, but thanks so much. Don't hesitate to reach out, to call, to I'm happy to, again, I feel strongly about paying it forward and using my talents and my skills to help others.
Great. April, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Tama. Thank you so much for this information. It's so needed and so valuable. It's one of those things where, at least in my view, that it's important to be coached. And because I know when I started out in my career, I had no idea. I was not prepared. And so I definitely appreciate you giving us these tips and pointers, because it's important to be prepared. You said be prepared and be professional is what I wrote down. And I just wish that I had known somebody like you when I started out, because I can tell you personally, I started behind the eight ball because I wasn't prepared. I had no idea that I could even research and then compare salaries and ranges. I was just I was just happy to get a job out of college, and so. But I, definitely, my daughter and for the younger people on the call, it's definitely okay to be prepared and to negotiate. So thank you so much, Tama, for this information. Definitely appreciate it. It is so useful. So what Mike is going to do is he's going to send a separate email to everyone that registered for this call. And somebody's phone is not on mute because I can hear feedback. Let me see. Mute. Okay. So Mike is going to send a separate email with Tama's contact information. So if you have a question for her, if you want to run something by her, or if you want her to be your coach, you'll have that in your email very shortly. So thank you again, Tama. Thank you, everyone else, for joining this call. We really appreciate your support. Again, I say it on every call that we can't do this without you. We do this for you. We do this so that as a community, as a team, as common bonds, we can all grow, we can all learn, we can all be supportive, and we can all help educate on what drives racism against African Americans, and we together can help close some of those gaps. So thank you so much for your continued support. We really appreciate it. And so I also want to say in closing to stay tuned, because next month we're going to continue along the same lines, and we're going to talk about mentoring and coaching mentoring, coaching, and sponsorship. So next month, we're going to have, in fact, a father and son team. John Ridgway, junior and senior, will be our guest next month to talk about mentorship, coaching, and sponsorship. So please join us if you can. Invite people to come and join us next month. It'll be equally really good information that we want to share with you guys. So thanks again, everyone. Is there anything else that we need to talk about? Are we all good? Happy holiday, everyone. Yeah, Christmas is coming. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. And I will see you next year.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining, everyone. I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, everybody.
Talk to you soon.
Awesome, Tama.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.